Hey guys, it's Ann. Welcome to my home worm farming channel, and today, believe it or not, we're going to get started expanding the herd and getting those babies going again for the European nightcrawlers in the vermibag wedge. So first things first, I have placed a bunch of my prepared bedding in these 3 trays. So that consists of basically shredded cardboard and paper like you see here. But it has been wetted with worm casting tea, as well as eggshell and some nutrients. And I will go ahead and put that in the comments below as far as the kelp meal liquid. And also, if you are doing this outside, you could use any sort of fish meal as well. Can be powdered, can be liquid, doesn't matter. What we need is some nutrients for the babies. All right, so first things first, let's get sifting. How long has it been since we've been sifting together? Let's have a look-see. All right, here we are at one of the European nightcrawlers bins that they've been living in since I took them out of their wedge so many months ago. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to do a bit of a sifting. I'm going to harvest some of the castings, and then the overs, and hopefully the eggs, are going to go in those bins so that they can start a new population. And if we get deep enough down and find some actual worms, I will put some worms in each one of those trays. So let's get that sifter together. Real quick, before I get going too farther, 2 things that we're going to be using here. I probably don't need the gloves today, but I prefer not to use disposable gloves when I do need them, when I have scratches, etc. on my hand, which currently I do not. These are the best of both worlds. They're washable. I put them in the washing machine. You can tell that there's very good tactile sensitivity here. Very flexible, come in a lot of sizes. If I was going to wear gloves, these are the ones I would use. And second of all, here are my trusty, dusty gold panning screens. And when you look them up on Amazon, that is what they are. They're for gold panning. And here's the largest one that I have that I don't normally use unless I'm looking for overs. And then here's the smaller one that I use when I'm trying to find cocoons, etc. This is smaller than 1/4 of an inch for those of you using the Imperial system. All right, so let's have a look and see what we can get. I'm purposely using the smaller screen that is under 1/4 of an inch, even though European nightcrawlers are good sized worms. Their cocoons are also good size, but they're smaller than 1/4 of an inch. So what I'm going to do is use this screen, and I don't know if anybody's seeing any cocoons in there, but this is what I'm going to do for a good long while. And I will bring you back when I have the results. All right, I have sifted off everything that's dry enough to do so, and I'm not finding a whole lot of worms. As you know, the European nightcrawlers were also affected by the mouse apocalypse. But we do have a little worm here and the tiniest little pill bug I've ever seen. And we're going to grab a handful of these. I'm sure there's some wisps and whatnot in here. And I'm going to go ahead and make that part of the mix that I go ahead and put into the new bins, where we're going to amp up the moisture. We're going to amp up the nutrients and frequency of nutrients, and we're going to get this worm colony going. All right, I have added about 1 gallon or 4 liters of distilled or RO water to those castings / overs and letting them hydrate really, really well. Some of you may or may not know, but if there were cocoons in there and they had gone dormant, rehydrating them and giving them a surplus of water is one way to knock them out of being dormant, to hydrate them so that they can in fact hatch and become worms. So that's one of the reasons why we're using a surplus of water here, is to give them the perfect situation. The basement here is about 75 degrees, sometimes less, depending. Right now we're back up to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So it might go a little higher than 72, which is what it's usually at. So let's get moved up and start adding this to those bins. Okay, here we go. So I have split that siftings into 3, and now we have some over here. So let's look really close and see if we can, oops, too close. See if we can find any cocoons. If anybody sees any cocoons, please put that in the comment below. All right, now for the other bin. So that one worm and the one roly-poly I found did go in here, so hopefully they will make more friends. Okay, and then what I've also done is taken some of the electric compost, which is primarily bedding and vegetables that have gone through the electric composter. I have a feeling some people have said that it's unavailable. They probably are coming out with a new model, and that's probably why the old one is no longer available. I'm going to have to update that link. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to add a small layer of the wet bedding on top of this so that the food, if it does heat up, can stay over here. And then I am going to mix this in with all of these so that the worms do have more real estate. And I'll bring you back when we're done. All right, and here we are at the 3 new incubator bins for the European nightcrawlers. And as you can tell, it is much, much wetter than what I am accustomed to doing. I think some of that water is going to reabsorb now that the paper's making contact. And hopefully that will absorb and be the perfect moisture for babies to hatch at. All right, guys, well, this is how I am doing my incubator bins. If you have any questions or comments, put that down below. And as always, thank you for hanging out with me and my worms.